Hello. A while ago, I managed to do the Lazarus Trophy on my druid. And in this video, I'm gonna explain how I did it and try to give some tips also for anyone else interested to try it. So yeah, without further ado, let's check the footage. So yeah, I start off, I go up here. You can do it any way you want, but I prefer to do this route to start off with. I do some zigzagging here, slow down a bit. I play it kind of safe here. Try to utilize as much space as I can in this big room, but I'm not that successful. I want to talk about this room, however, in particular. I call it the dungeon room, and it's a very safe room if you manage to teleport over, because then it's one of the few places where you can actually wait for him with the purify ready, and as soon as he show up, you just purify and run away. It's very rare that he managed to, throw some totems straight onto your feet after teleporting across this wall. And he can't either throw totems across the wall from the other side, so it's a very safe spot to set up some easy purifies. Compared to this room, which I call the swamp, which is usually most of my runs ends down here in this area. I kinda suggest avoiding this as much as possible. Like, these small doorways are very easy to get stuck in, or he teleports into you. But yeah, I managed to escape through the tunnel, and then I go around to clean up the totems. I use bow druid in this footage. I came to the conclusion that the bow druid is the best druid build for doing this challenge, since you have access to cascade, which covers a large area for cleaning up totems, and you can also shoot around corners easily the totems with both cascade and steady aim. And you also get passive movement speed bonus as bow druid from one of his passive skills. But when I actually get chased by him and purify him, I switch to a two-handed staff because it has faster cast rate than a bow. It has 6 frames compared to 7. I mean, you can do it also with 7, and I had some very successful runs only using the bow with the 7 cast speed, but it feels much better with the 6 speed from staffs. So I suggest really checking out your own class and build to see what's the fastest available weapon. In this moment, I kind of freaked out. I had no idea he was gonna show up here. I thought I would just clean up some totems, maybe try to ambush him, but I kind of panicked here. I tried to run away. But as I try to run away, he teleports inside of me. And this is something you have to anticipate. Sooner or later, he's gonna teleport inside of you randomly. It's more likely to happen if you run through a choke point like these cage doorways down there. But in this case, I was kind of hugging this corner of the wall, so he just teleported into me. And if you have teleport on cooldown at these moments, you're kind of dead, or at least lose the challenge. So if you haven't already done the void to get teleport, or you're an assassin with blink, then I highly suggest getting it before trying this trophy. If you're using Gitan's Gate for this, I salute you, you're a madman, but I highly don't recommend Gitan's Gate with this 7-second cooldown or something like this. Because sometimes you're kind of forced to use a defensive teleport against this guy. And if he then teleports inside of you straight afterwards, you're dead. You're flat out dead. But by some miracle, I managed to shake him off after that teleport. I was kind of distraught, but then I realized, wait a minute, now he's stuck in a better position. Because now he's waiting for me in the big room. So I can clean up the tunnel down here and the swamp. And set up a bigger and longer path. Because the goal is basically to try to squeeze as much out of him as possible every time you go around the map. And then go around and clean. Like, ideally it would be like 3 laps and then he's dead, but it's very unstable and you never know how he will react in certain situations. So you have to improvise most of the time. Okay, I set it up and then I go up here and try to squeeze a pretty long lap around this big room with him. I feel like this is the safest and easiest room to utilize the space and do a lot of purify. So The more you can run up here, the better. There we go. And I played safe here. I could probably have squeezed out another Purify, but I just run. And it turns out to be the best choice. He almost got me with the totems there. Then I go back here to clean up the big room. I clean up the dungeon room as well. And this is important to keep this clean because you never know when you might need it. All these side areas might really save your life. I'm also using Ice Tomb with Cannot Be Frozen. So I highly recommend using Cannot Be Frozen against these groupies because they do tri-elemental damage or something like that. When the cold really slows you down, even if you have 90 cold resist. And then the setup is done, and I go back here, try to pick him up. He kind of hunkered down here, so I have to somehow lure him out. But these annoying totems are blocking my way. So I'm forced in a weird position where I have to destroy totems next to him and get the debuff, and then I have to wait for the debuff. And it's something you have to live with. But it's a good time to put potions in your inventory. And there we go. And I lost him again. At this point, I'm kind of frustrated because this is a giant waste of time. And you only have 10 minutes to do this if you want the trophy. So I'm stuck here trying to clean up groupies, trying to pick off the totems, begging for him to show up. And by some miracle, he finally decides to show up again. And the race is on again. He dodged the Purify, but it happens. I take my sweet time in the dungeon room, get a free Purify basically. And I decide to run away. Since the tunnel downstairs is full of totems, I have to cut my chase short. Because otherwise I just risk getting trapped between the tunnel and him. A lot of totems. And this totem is what I call stuck. Sometimes these totems stop functioning normally. You can't kill them. Then you have to resort to either avoiding them, waiting for him to spawn some more totems, which seemingly unstuck these totems, so you can then destroy them normally. Or you can do the very aggressive approach, and that's to getting tremor range of these totems, which makes them unstuck, activates them essentially, and then try to destroy the totem before it casts tremor, which is a really ballsy and risky move. But in this case, I just tried to see if I could squeeze the outer wall without casting the tremor. And I also apply a cascade on top of the totem in case it actually activates as I walk past it. So I set up the cascade, I walk past, and I notice, okay, it's friendly. It doesn't care about me. And then I go clean up the rest. Like you really have to respect the totems, but at the same time you can't be afraid of them. There will be situations where you have to zigzag through totems or really squeeze past them. It's just something you have to live with if you want to have a really long chase with this guy. Clean up the dungeon room. And there I could have lost the run here, but this one as well is, I don't know if it's stuck or if it's just in a weird angle, but it could have tremored my ass there. So I really suggest checking those corners with some skills that go around corners and try not to hugging walls to make sure you don't accidentally get tremored by totems like this hiding. I know this one is safe, so I hug the outer wall. And I go pick up the man of the hour. He has a lot of friends, so I kind of play it safe, lure him away from the crowds. Slowly walk through these hallways. And now I try to escape from him, but he refuses. He just keeps chasing me. And this is really scary, but I managed to chase him off here just before the dungeon room. I kind of had to take a gamble here. I didn't know if there were any totems in this specific corner or not, but he was waiting outside the dungeon room, so once again, these kind of risks you have to take. Now I get the chance to clean up the big room. At this point, I'm starting to look at the clock. Also, because the in-game clock is like 8 minutes, but I think I arrived here at like 30 seconds into the game. So I have give or take like 2.5 minutes to finish him off and cube the charm. But I have a lot to clean up. And now I just decide, okay, fuck it. I've cleaned up enough of the map. I need to go for one big push. So I try to squeeze out as much space as I can through the dungeon room, but once again, he decides not to cooperate. He gets stuck up there. And at this point, I'm just pleading and begging him with him basically to just follow me, goddammit. I'm going against my own device and going straight towards him, and yeah, he cooperates. He actually shows up. He decides to chase me again. Like, he could have just bunkered down there with a lot of totems, but he didn't for some reason. So yeah, at this point, I'm very nervous. Hands are shaking. I'm utilizing as much space as I can because I know I haven't cleaned up properly down in the tunnels and in the swamp. That's a very bad purify, but it's enough to kill him. It could have ended really badly there. And I quickly cube the charm, and that's that. At this point, I'm just exhausted. I've been practicing this on and off stream for at least 10 to 15 hours. So it felt really good to manage to finally do it. I'd like to end this video with a couple of tips. You have to really build your character around this particular challenge. You have to build really defensively somehow. A lot of HP, a lot of faster cast rate, enough for the breakpoints depending on your weapon and your class. And check your passives in your skill tree. Is there anything that your particular class can do defensively? Like, for example, Bow Druid has a lot of movement speed, and if you're Assassin, you have a lot of avoid and movement speed from the speed buffs and stuff like that. Like, anything that your class can do defensively, you have to bring it to this fight. And if you have a lot of HP regen as well, that also helps a lot. And cannot be frozen is one of the, I wouldn't say essential things you have to bring as well. Personally, I use Ice Tomb. Not that Ice Tomb, the other one. But there are also other sources of cannot be frozen. But most sources of cannot be frozen are stuck on a weapon or something like that. So that's why it's kind of tricky. You gotta see what fits you best. Other thing is to learn the map, which spots are good, which spots are kind of bad, where you can run away from him effectively, how to navigate the map efficiently. Like, you have to, somehow in your mind draw up the most complicated route without, getting stuck. Kind of like the Snake, the old mobile game, And slowly you get better and better at this. And the more purifies you can squeeze in per lap, and the more efficiently these runs will go. Yeah, as I also mentioned before, you gotta respect the totems, but don't be afraid of them. You kind of have to learn what is the tremor radius so you can navigate them more efficiently. Check those corners, however, because if you hug corners and run around corners, you might accidentally get tremor by something hiding across the wall. So yeah, bring some AoE skills or anything that wraps around corners that might make sure that some runs don't end prematurely. One thing I would like to also mention is don't U-turn. Sometimes when he gets stuck like this and doesn't want to chase you anymore, he starts spamming totems wherever he stands and summons. If you U-turn at this point and be like, wait a minute, I lost him, I'll come back. There's a strong chance he's either already on his way to bombard you with totems because you're still technically in his aggro range, or that he's throwing totems around himself as a defensive perimeter. So you might just get tremored right in the face if you try to U-turn. So in that sense, I highly suggest instead to try to flank around him depending on where he got stuck, because he's less likely to throw totems in that direction. And if you get close enough with this approach, he should be teleporting back at you and starting the chase again. Or another option is just to kind of ignore him and take what you've been given and take the opportunity to clean up summons around him and totems and maybe get an even longer and a more efficient chase from the starting point where he got stuck. And another tip I would like to mention is to turn on the in-game clock in the menu and keeping an eye on it. Not as a kind of a stress mechanism, but more to see how efficient you are, because you only have 10 minutes before the trophy deactivates, and you gotta kill him before that. I wouldn't say worry that much about the clock. It's more about, you know, at the end of the run to see, okay, how hard do I have to push? Because if you play properly and you clean up properly, the clock isn't an issue. The issue is when he gets stuck or you do some other random mistakes and start throwing, then the clock becomes an issue, and then you might have to do some serious gambles and risks in order to make it under 10 minutes. But the more you practice, the more you start to feel the flow and the clock to see if you're fast or slow at any given moment. But don't worry too much about it, unless it's literally on the edge and you have 9 minutes on the clock and he's almost dead, then you have to kind of press it. Simply improvise. A lot of these runs over these 10-15 hours, I kind of did the same routine over and over and failed, but sometimes I had to improvise, or I just fuck it, I just winged it, and those runs on average went a lot better when I wasn't thinking that much ahead what I was doing and just going with the flow. So in that sense, try different routes, try to approach it from different angles and see if it helps or not. But in general, I really don't recommend standing and waiting for him at any given moment, except if you lure him down to the dungeon room and wait for him there to jump over the wall. Because if you're in an open space and you stand and wait for him to teleport onto you so you can purify, odds are he'll just orbital you with some totems from where he stood when you started waiting, or he will teleport straight on top of you, and basically he's precasting his totems already. So in that sense, I highly don't recommend standing still for any given reason other than in the dungeon room. And in the bottom right corner, there's also this zigzag area where you can teleport across the walls easily, but he can also easily follow you there. So if you try to lure him or get away from him by teleporting over walls, I highly don't recommend it, because you kind of restrict your playing area then, and he doesn't really care about walls in general, except maybe the dungeon room one. So you kind of do yourself a disservice if you try to escape from him by teleporting, but sometimes you have no choice and you have to improvise if you really screwed up badly. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.